alcohol. A lot of people do not report how much they're drinking. When I have this rule of thumb, if somebody tells me, whatever they tell me they drink, I kind of double it. Because most of the time people aren't honest, you know? So they'll say, oh, I just have 2 glasses, so all right, you have a bottle. You know, it's kind of how it goes. So a lot of people drink alcohol at the end of the day. They have a bottle of wine. I see this a lot in my professional clients, the teachers, the medical professionals. They go home and they're just drinking, and then they feel depressed. So they're not having proper nutrition and the alcohol, and so they go in, doc, I'm depressed, they get the medication, but again, it's not therapeutic. So we have this problem that keeps growing. Also, trauma. We have new understanding about trauma in our nervous system, that when our nervous system has been impacted by trauma, we have difficulty regulating our nervous system. I'm going to talk more about this later in our talk. But these things all share similar symptoms. ADHD, anxiety, trauma, all of those, you'll have problems with attention concentration, memory difficulties, and so forth. So just because someone feels really down and depressed, it doesn't mean that we're talking about major depression. And again, they have circumstantial things like marital problems and normal struggles. A lot of times people say they're depressed, but they had a loved one that just passed away. So of course they're going to be sad and depressed. They're grieving. So we don't want, or let's look at when you're in midterms and finals and you're not sleeping and you're really pushing yourself and you just feel awful and you say, I think I'm depressed. You're stressed. That's what's happening. So we need to get sleep. We need to recognize that we're in a unique season that is stretching us, and really not jump to the conclusion that it's major depression. To meet the diagnostic criteria for depression, we have to have it last for a duration of 2 weeks or more, where you have 5 or more of the symptoms. So again, I want to highlight that it's not sadness. Sadness is not depression. Depression is a very intense emotion that affects how your mood, and it affects your energy of your body. Your body is depressed. So a lot of people will describe it like feeling like they're moving through mud or they're stuck in tar. And it literally takes so much effort just to get out of bed. It feels like you've got 100 pounds on top of you. So there's many, before we go on the criteria, let's talk about the different types of depression. There's many different types that we have to select from. We have major depression, we have dysthymia, we have depression related to menstrual cycles, we have depression that is caused by substance abuse, and like we said, alcohol, marijuana, and other drugs. We have it from medical conditions. If you have Hashimoto's syndrome or something along those lines, you're going to have depression. So we really, again, as a clinical psychologist, I'm assessing when someone comes in depressed, what is the origin of this? Is this depression episode from bipolar disorder, from medical, and so forth? So the symptoms of depression, in order to get the diagnosis, you have to have at least 5 of these. So typically you have a low mood, you have low energy, you might feel tearful, but you might not. A lot of people can just have flat affect, what we call flat emotion, like they just don't feel anything. We call that anhedonia. It's the meh kind of thing. You have difficulty with your sleep. You can't sleep, or you're oversleeping all the time, just tired all the time. You lack motivation. It's hard to get up and get moving. And the reason for that is motivation requires dopamine. And if you're down, you might not have enough dopamine in your body. So without that, you're going to feel like you're dragging. And these new things increase dopamine. So that's where we typically get super energized with new ideas and new things. Or we're shopping, or we're doing something exciting, and then it kind of fades. Because dopamine is just like short little bursts into your body, but it's not meant, it doesn't sustain. So, and then here we see the social withdrawal that we talked about with the introvert as well. And troubles concentrating, attention, memory. The reason for the memory is, let's look at your hand. Your hand is a perfect model of the human brain. you have the spine, and in the middle of your hand is the limbic system. This is the lizard brain, the reptilian brain. Every animal has that, including a lizard. I just said that. And over that is the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is what makes us different from monkeys and from animals and everything. The frontal lobe is what we use for higher human functioning, for critical thinking, delayed gratification, good judgment, good insight, emotion regulation. It's all right here in the frontal lobe. And that part of your brain is the last to get developed. In the male brain, some say it finishes developing by the age you're 24, and recently I've heard numbers as high as 26. For the female brain, it could be anywhere from 18 to 22. So a lot of times you have women going, what is wrong with these guys? They're not thinking, they're so impulsive, they're still cooking that brain. So just wait till we hit 24, and then we're gonna have a little bit calmer, different perspective about things. So what happens when our nervous system gets activated and all the chemicals get sent out to our body, we will flip our lids and become lizard brains. And so here we are talking to someone, we're like, I'm upset, what, and they start yelling like this, and then they say all sorts of stuff. They're fighting, they're reacting, they're distorting what's going on, and they have real intensity. And then you go away, you cool down, your nervous system cools down, the frontal lobe comes back on, and then you go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Why did I say that? And you come back and say, I really didn't mean that, I'm sorry. And so then you have a larger perspective. So one of the interventions we do in therapy is to teach people to not let your emotions guide you or lead you. We want to acknowledge our feelings, validate our feelings, attend to them, but we want to not follow them, we want to guide them. So important principle is feelings are not facts, and thoughts are not truths. There's something we experience, and it's information that we need our higher mental functioning to help guide us with. So what happens in this middle section here, there's an area called the hippocampus. And think of the campus librarian as Mrs. Hippo. And Mrs. Hippo's job is to get information from you and to sort it out, code it, and put it in your library. So you come in, you give her information, she goes, oh, we just need this for today, so she puts it in the get rid of it pile. Another one that says, oh, we'll need this just short term, puts it over there, and then she determines, I really need this long term, and she codes it, she moves it over long term. And so she's doing this all day long, really just managing that memory, putting it in the different areas of your brain. Kind of similar to the movie Inside Out. That movie really demonstrates how they determine short-term, long-term memory. So if you scare Mrs. Hippo, if there's a fire alarm at the school and the sound's off, so your nervous system gets activated, you flip your lid, fire alarm's going off, danger, danger, your fight and flight response is activated, then she cannot handle it and passes out. She goes, that's it, I'm napping. And boom, down she goes. And she falls asleep the whole time the emergency is going on. Then the emergency's over and she wakes up and she goes, what happened? And this is why we have problems with memory when we're depressed, because our Mrs. Hippo is sleeping. She is not on board. And a lot of people will come in therapy thinking, I think I either have brain damage or I have dementia. It scares them that much. They're that forgetful, that absent-minded. We call that pseudo-dementia. And a lot of times, once they get their depression treated and they get back balanced, then they don't have those symptoms anymore in depression. So this is the neuroscience behind why that is one of the symptoms of it. And then, of course, you have suicidal thoughts, but not everyone depressed has suicide thoughts, and not everyone depressed does self-harm. What a lot of people don't realize is self-harm behavior can be a way that we regulate our nervous system. So when we're upset, we call that a dysregulated nervous system. You're really upset, and you have all these thoughts and all these feelings, and it just feels awful. Some people can't get a point of reference for their pain, so they'll create it with self-harm. And that way they can focus on it here rather than feeling so overwhelmed by what's going on. It can also activate a calming effect to your nervous system, and so sometimes people will use it for that purpose as well. So we want to take the shame out of self-harm too, because we want to recognize that it's not, like you're not wanting to do that necessarily. It's the skill that your brain learned, but it's a maladaptive skill, and so we want to learn other skills. So I'm going to give you real quick, I'm not talking about shame today, but just so you know what I mean when I talk about that, I'm going to describe it like this. Guilt is what you feel when you violate your values. Shame is what you feel when you violate their values. And toxic shame is what you've come to believe about who you are when you violated their values. So guilt is a conviction, shame is a social correction, and toxic shame is an identity condemnation. So you go from, I made a mistake, and it's a mistake and I need to clean it up and I'll do something about it. That's the healthy function of healthy shame, is that we need to have that response. If we do something and people go, don't do that, don't hit people, don't steal, whatever, it helps correct us, and we don't like that feeling at all, so we adjust ourselves. This is good. When people don't have that, then they become psychopaths and sociopaths, and we don't want that. So we want to have a shame reaction, and the shame reaction is hardwired into your body. Guilt is measured at 6 years of age, and it's dependent on complex thinking in your frontal lobe. But shame is hardwired into your ancient brain, and it's measured at 15 months of age. So it is an emotional reflex that is there for our survival. It's absolutely necessary. We have a group that we belong to. In all of the history of humans, we needed that for our survival, to make, for food, for shelter, for protection, all those things. We needed our group. But if we don't have the group, if the group exiles us, then we are at risk of not surviving. So shame is hardwired into our nervous system to ensure that we will belong to the group, that the group will find value in us, and not find that we're so dangerous or problematic that they remove us from the group. And so this is why it's hardwired. It's a survival emotion. It's very intense. It's one of the most intense emotions you can have. But when we don't understand it, and when people say, instead of you just made a mistake, they go, you are a mistake. You're fundamentally flawed and wrong and bad because you made that mistake. Then we're crossing over to toxic shame. And the truth is, we all struggle with it. Shame is, the outcome of shame is people-pleasing, perfectionism. It fuels our eating disorders, our compulsive behaviors, our vices, all that stuff to soothe the shame or to distract the shame. So this is why I talk about it and expose it so much. So when I say shame, I'm mostly referring to toxic shame. So when we look at what causes this, I kind of highlighted this. We have biological causes for shame. We have cognitive. Cognitive is the toxic shame, the poor beliefs we have about who we are. The things we tell ourselves, the inner critic, you do something and it's like, oh, why am I so stupid? I'm always messing up. If you think stinking thinking thoughts, you're going to feel stinking thinking. You're going to feel bad. You think bad, you're going to feel bad. That's how it works. And so, but we don't want to make the mistake of assuming that depression is exclusively related to our thoughts, because it is biophysiological, which means it is affected by our body to our brain and our brain to our body. So you got both on board. It's not one or the other. And historically, shame has been treated as a thought problem. If you can just think this way, you'll be fine. Like I just look at you and say, don't be depressed. Just don't. Okay, right? So, I would love to not be depressed, or someone would love to. They go in, they don't want to. They're not choosing that. But people don't understand, and so they'll go, well, just don't do that. Just choose otherwise. And that's when we start shaming the person. Because it's like, well, I can't, so what does that mean about me? And that's what we don't want to do. We want to help demystify the mystery of what's happening to their body. So we have lifestyle issues, sleep problems, poor diet, you're not eating enough protein and fat. You need protein and fat in your diet to make dopamine and absorb it. So you'll be deficient if you don't have enough protein. And so there's lots to say about your nutrition. And of course stressors, financial stressors, school, things like this. and genetic things. Another thing that's important to highlight is if you're deficient in zinc, may struggle with anxiety and depression. So it's recommended that you get 500 units of zinc a day, and a lot of times that helps treat mental health struggles, as well as magnesium. So most everyone I work with, I have them on a complex vitamin B, I have them on D, I have them on zinc, magnesium, a probiotic, and that's what we do to support their health and get them really hydrated. Because if you're not hydrated, you'll feel depressed and anxious. But just getting hydrated can help you to not feel that way, and give you more energy. If you're tired, start drinking water will help. Yes?
What if you're stuck in the past?
In ruminating in the past?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when that happens, we need therapeutic tools for that. We need strategies to redirect our thoughts. Like there's so many pieces to that of looking at understanding what we're stuck in. A lot of times that's trauma. Shame is social trauma. I consider shame a social PTSD. So you avoid any sort of making mistakes. You're trying to fix. A lot of times rumination is trying to fix, trying to repair. And so we have to offer a new solution for them today. So I say in therapy that like when we're in the child mind, we need the outside world to be bigger, stronger, wiser, kinder. We needed them to attend to our emotions and to be attuned to us and anticipate that. But as adults, we don't need that, because we can now do what adults did when we were younger that we couldn't do. When we're little, we can't get in a car, we can't move, we can't change our circumstance, we can't empower ourselves. But as adults, you can. And so we have to help people make that transition. Instead of trying to get the outside world to be okay for me to be okay, how do I become okay? And take that self-leadership but that requires skills. And a lot of times we're not equipped with skills for our mind. How do I parent myself? How do I lead myself? So sometimes I'll tell my clients, imagine you have a child with you throughout the day. If you have a kid with you, you're going to think, okay, I need to make sure they have a jacket, I need to make sure we have water, I need to make sure they have food. And so you're packing all that stuff and you're making sure they're good to go for the day. But as adults, we don't do that. We run out the door, we're like, oh, I'm so hungry, we forget to eat, we're cold, we're not planning for things and anticipating it like we do with a child. So this is where we really want to take that self-care and really that responsibility to do that for ourselves. So this is all things that we learn in therapy. But there's also physical reasons why people get stuck. And I wasn't going to go into this, but I think it's helpful here. What we now know about trauma is that what we consider old trauma is that you went into 9/11 and jolted you, and you can't shake it off. New trauma is saying that when you came into this world, your nervous system needed to get formed by this myelin. It needed to get myelinated, which is like insulated, so it can slip in your brain and communicate in your brain really efficiently. So when you have an efficient nervous system, you don't get upset too easily, and if you do, you can regulate your emotion and you can go back to calm. Well, in order to do that, to flow in and manage our emotions, we need to have a regulated nervous system. But when we're under too much stress, psychological stress, physical stress, environmental stress, our body can get stuck in that stress response. And actually, I will talk about that a little more in a slide I'm going to have. So let's hold on to that, and I'll explain that to you, because that's where we're going right now. So I want today for you to walk away with a new understanding, a new paradigm on depression that has been informed by our recent discoveries with polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory, know it, and know everything you need to know about it, because it will be a game changer for you. And polyvagal theory helps us understand how a lot of our responses are adaptive, and they're helping us to survive. And so they have a new paradigm on this that we're going to talk about. I love this quote. that I found. It said, for generations we have seen depression as an illness, an unnecessary deviation from normal functioning. It's an idea that makes sense because depression, suffering, because it causes suffering and even death. But what if we've all got it wrong? What if depression is not an aberration at all, which means like something wrong with you, something that gets rid of you, but an important part of your biological defense system? And that's what we're going to expose today. So Stephen Porges discovered this theory and teaches about it across the world. It's changed the way we do therapy. It's changed all our understanding. Now, because I've been in the mental health field for 30 years, when people would talk about polyvagal, or would talk about trauma, I think, oh, I don't need to get trained in that. I know, I'm seasoned, I'm experienced. But 4 years ago, my life got affected by trauma that happened to our family. And I was then beginning the journey of getting help because the regular help was not working. And that's when I came across the new trauma information. And once I learned it, every client that came in return, I'd say, I am so sorry. I have to apologize to you now because I did not know what I know now, and we were doing it all wrong. We were like really targeting your thoughts. We were really targeting like irrational thoughts and framing and your belief systems. But what we know now about our emotions and trauma is that it is what we call bottom up, which means it comes to our body first and then to our thoughts. Where the traditional therapy was based on top down, thoughts to body. So the assumption was you can think differently and you will feel differently. But that's only a piece of the pie. We have to learn how to bring our body into a different physical experience to actually have different thoughts and feelings. So this brings us into our brains, that we have two different brains in our system. We have our ancient brain, which is hardwired DNA from all of our ancestors. All of our ancestors, for their experience, developed our DNA. If I had a great-grandparent that got attacked by a rabbit, and now all of a sudden I can't handle rabbits, I have no idea. A rabbit never bothered me, never upset me, but I see a rabbit, I want to scream and run out. That's my grandparent inside of me. They learned about that danger, and their brain said, noted, that's a high priority. For our survival, we must know about these rabbits. So this is why sometimes we have these experiences where we don't know why we're feeling the way we're feeling, but it's woven into our body. The good news is we can reshape that. As we begin to create new experiences, we're creating new messages into our DNA for our descendants. So we have that ability to work with that. And so you have your ancient brain. That part of you is 25 times faster than your thinking brain. So the thinking brain is what we're conscious of, is what we know. And the thing is, a lot of therapy is based on declarative memory. And declarative memory is my ability to tell you a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if you come into therapy, well, tell me what's going on. We're relying on the fact that they could go, well, back in the day, this happened, now I'm feeling this, and now this is going to happen. But when you are dysregulated, your Mrs. Hippo that we talked about, she was asleep, so we're not forming the memory that was necessary for declarative memory to be able to say that. So it's almost like you're in a box that has holes in it. Imagine you're in a war zone or something, and there's all these holes, and you can see things fly by. You can see a flash, you can see a foot, you can see a face, but you really don't quite know what's going on. And that's what happens when we're emotionally dysregulated. Why it's hard for us to recall. Why it's hard for us to describe. When someone says, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? You're like, I don't even know what to say. And so they go to therapy thinking, I really need help, but they don't know how to verbalize it because they're affected by this trauma. So we rely a lot on our conscious brain, but that's the last to get the message. We have this ancient brain that is really working hard for us. And it is determining safety before our brain knows whether we're safe or not. So to illustrate, this is the Polyvagal Chart. I love this. I have everybody know this. And this is how we look at your nervous system. We used to say there was two parts to your nervous system. You're calm, and now you have fight and flight. Now we know there's three parts. You have the calm, fight and flight, and the freeze. What is absolutely incredible discovery is that the calming effect of your nervous system, the parasympathetic part of your nervous system, regulates both the peaceful green light zone and the freeze response, which is what we do when we're preparing for death. So it's like a mouse getting ready to die with a cat, and it just passes out. This chart here, normally I use a chart that has green, yellow, red, so it's like a traffic light. But the freeze response is where we have depression. So the freeze response is where we experience shame, hopelessness, we feel numb, we're not motivated. And when we're there, it decreases our insulin activity, and that's where why stress contributes to diabetes. And we have a lower immune system. And interestingly enough, your heart rate goes down. And so a lot of times people are stressed and go, I have a really low heart rate. And that's a sign to me that they're in a freeze state, which is very harmful to them to stay there. So this gentleman, when he asked me, what if you're stuck? What happens is that our inner ear muscle is regulating our states of our nervous system. It's like the pupil in your eye. When you're in a bright room, it goes small, and when you're in a dark room, it opens up to take in the stuff. Well, our ear muscle does the same. There's 3 cranial nerves that go over to our ear muscle that determine what we're going to have in our body, whether we're going to go into a calm state or we're getting ready to fight or run. So this muscle is expanding and shrinking, expanding and shrinking. In order for us to be in the green light, it requires our neuroception, this is a word we use in Polyvagal, which is how we perceive things, requires that I am face to face with you, that we have eye contact, that we are pacing with each other well. You ever had that experience where you're talking to someone, you say the same thing at the same time, it's like you're stepping on each other's feet, like, hi, oh, bye, at the same time? You know, it's like the pace is off and it makes us uncomfortable. And so we need to have that flow, and we need to be able to see their eyes and their eye expression and hear their voice, the calming, warm sound of the voice. If our neuroception likes the eyes, likes the face, likes the voice, it goes, oh, we're good. And it brings you to that green light, and we can have all the healing effects of that where we feel we're in the best atmosphere to learn, to have insight, to digest our food, to feel creative. If people are writers, you want to be in that green light. If you're doing school, you want to be in that green light. But that requires specifically social engagement. But what happens when we're depressed? When we're depressed, we stop engaging socially. So the very thing that our nervous system requires to heal, we are not moving towards. So this is where I teach people to do opposite action. When depression tells you to go isolate, then go approach. Very hard to do. You have to impose on yourself to do it. But it makes a difference. But it's really important that you're with people that you can feel comfortable with, they're safe with, and if you don't have those people, we need to build that community. I just did a TED Talk on this very subject, and it was exposing to people that, because what I just said was that our nervous system is best regulated with human contact, but what are we all doing? We're all interacting, not face to face, especially not COVID. We're on Zoom, we're on FaceTime, we're texting, we're emailing, and just when our brain is having human interaction that is not flesh to flesh, but flesh to metal, it bugs it out, freaks it out. And it will make you in a fight and flight state, and it will remain there until you are in an environment that our brain has been conditioned to understand, which is to be, like our ancestors knew, like we were in the same room. We're talking to each other, we're engaging. And that's what it knows. It doesn't know this technology yet. This has only been how many years compared to the thousands and thousands that our ancestors had. So everyone's feeling awful. And the mistake we're making is saying, oh, you're on social media, get off social media, it's because you're insecure, it's because you don't feel good. But what happens is when our nervous system says something's wrong, I'm in danger, it wants to know why. And it leans in to gather the information, and that's where we start comparing. You're not comparing because you have a low self-esteem. You're comparing because your brain is trying to figure out, why am I not safe? So when we don't feel socially safe, that activates a shame response. We don't know why we feel so awful about ourselves, why we don't like ourselves, and then that leads to depression. So if you're depressed, we must stop interacting digitally, and we must start going back to old school human interaction as much as possible. It's so important that in the mental health field, we've been saying that this whole mask mandate and everything, we're saying, okay, you're protecting yourself from this, but we are absolutely devastating our mental health with our faces being covered. And so we needed to have some solution to that, because the isolation was the worst thing happening. So we've been getting more and more depressed, feeling worse and worse, and not knowing why. And that was my theory. So here I am, Shamebusting on TEDx, and exposing how the biological anthropologists showed that our need to withdraw is an adaptive response. So think about it in a social context. If I'm somewhere and I feel toxic shame being activated, my body's going to go retreat to safety. Because if you're out there, they're going to know that something's wrong with you, and you will be exiled. Don't go, isolate, be safe, right? So that's an adaptive response. So when we're not feeling good, our body and our brain is going to pull us to safety. So we will survive. But it's not an adaptive strategy for modern time. It's an adaptive strategy for the ancient times, but for modern time, it creates havoc for us. So here we're saying that we are trying to avoid the social rejection, and that is what leads us to the depression response. I'll put some of these slides on my social media too, so you guys can have it. And if you email me or go to my website at drshawnhorn.com, I'll give you these slides, and feel free to pass them out to people too. So, because I have a lot of information on here that we're not going to be able to cover all today. So what we want to do, here's another quote that I love. The problem with the old way of thinking is that when we think of depression as irrational suffering, we stigmatize people and potentially rob them of hope. One of the things I had a client once tell me, the most powerful thing you did for me was to give me hope. So the worst thing that ever happened to me was when I went to a psychiatrist said, you will always have this struggle. And he just gave up right then and went into 4 years of the worst depression ever. But when he came to me, he goes, is this fixable? I'm like, oh yeah, we can fix this. We can do stuff. And here's the important thing to know. Therapy is not about getting rid of. Okay, this is where people get messed up. They think I'm going to go to therapy and I'll get rid of the depression, I'll get rid of the anxiety. That's like saying I'm going to get rid of cloudy days, I'm going to get rid of rainy days. We have our own internal forecast that is just part of our natural experience. Sometimes we just wake up and we don't feel so good, and that's normal and that's okay. We have a high intolerance for negative emotions, and part of healing and living masterfully is tolerating all those emotions more effectively. So what we're doing in therapy is we're equipping people to manage the storms differently, more successfully, so it doesn't hold them down and they don't get defeated by the storm. So we're not removing the storms, we're learning to manage it better. And when you manage it better, it doesn't get at such a level of intensity. And the truth is, this is normal. This is what every person that people look at and say, you're so healthy, they got it together. They're managing their storms, and they aren't always doing it so good, but you just don't see it because it's behind closed doors. Every single person struggles in one of 3 areas: relationships, finances, or health, and there's no exceptions to that. So we are deceiving ourselves when we think we are that special in our struggle, because we are just as human as everybody else, and it's just circumstances can make things look bigger or not, but it's, we're all perfectly imperfect. So the solution is not to look at it as we got to get rid of this, but to really understand that depression is part of our immobilization response. It's like biofeedback to us, that our body is overwhelmed. It's been in the fight and flight too long. So think about like the fight and flight state, like having your foot on the gas pedal, and the freeze state like your foot on the brake. And what happens is we're holding those both down, and over time, you get burned out. And that's what happens to our body. And when our body starts to get burned out, it breaks down, our chemicals aren't working so well, we start to really struggle, and then we get stuck. That ear muscle that I talked about stops dilating, and it gets stuck, and then we can't down-regulate ourselves. So Stephen Porges created this therapy called safe sound therapy, which I do in my practice. It's 5 hours that you listen to this music that they manipulated. It's like music therapy to unglue that ear muscle. And then when you finally get it like oiled up again, and it can move the way it needs to, then we can regulate our emotion better and be resilient. When it's stuck, we get sensitive to sound. We don't hear tones, right? Like you'll only hear the threatening tones, and you just won't be able to take in the sounds that are saying you're safe, because it's not opening and expanding to hear that sound. So you'll end up feeling threatened when you're not threatened. And it even alters the way we see faces. When we're in a fight and flight state, you see someone like give you a surprise look, like, well, our brain will convert it to like a frown, because it's looking for the danger and is trying to make sure that it knows everything it needs to know to be safe. And so it will exaggerate sounds and exaggerate faces. And this is why people say, why are you yelling? You go, I'm not yelling. And they're like, yes, you are. And you're like, oh my gosh. You know, and when we're there, everything's louder, bigger, scarier. So to prevent this, we need to make sure that we are engaging socially, because that brings us to the green light. But we want to do what's called vagal tone exercises. These are hacks to your nervous system, where your nervous system can't go down to that green light on its own to calm. But what we can do is we can open up the switchboard and switch it. And there's a couple things you can do. If you're having panic attacks, anxiety, you can't sleep at night, get rubbing alcohol, 70% in a cotton ball. I have this on my YouTube and my TikTok to demonstrate. And you kind of just dip it, so you get the bottle and you just kind of put a little bit on the cotton, and then you just put it in your ear, and you hold it for 1 to 4 minutes. It causes that ear muscle to have a release, and you will feel calm, and it will halt a panic attack. It is the most powerful thing. I mean, literally. I put this on TikTok, I have 3,000 comments of people saying it changed their life. Why did they not know this before? And it actually was something that I discovered. Had to take it down because I got a nasty email, so I had to like refine it. But that was like the best evidence. You know, what other chances you have to get 3,000 random responses? So also, humming, gargling. This opens up the green light in your body. Dancing, wiggling, tapping. These are all things that help to regulate your body. So if you want to learn more about that, look up vagal tone exercises, or go learn about vagal. Stephen Porges is all over YouTube. There's lots of people out there teaching about this. And this will help you do what your thoughts cannot do on its own. When you're sitting there going, I'm thinking positive, I'm saying the affirmations, I'm working on my inner critic, and I cannot shake this. It is, in that moment, we got to address the body. And we don't want to first jump to medication, because it might be something that you can do without the medication. And even with the medication, you still need to do it. So we want to see, like, not be afraid of medication, because sometimes that's indicated. We want to support our health. But we do want to learn these things that are more effective, just as effective, if not more effective. So for example, 20 minutes of daily exercise is more effective than psychotropic medication and then antidepressants. So if you're depressed, move your body 20 minutes. You don't have to go to like some fitness place and you know, really overdo it, but just walk, just do something gentle, get your body moving, and it will really help you. So we know that vagal tone exercises, daily movement, understand about the life cycle of emotions. Emotions have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's like eating food, digesting food, and expelling food. And so the expelling naturally is shaking, running, fighting. We don't do that anymore because we're all so calm, mature, and wise, right? But if something jolts you, you're stressed, you need to get that energy out of you. It's like a balloon. The stress filled it up, and we need to let the air out of that balloon. And so that is when you move your body, get like, this is why people say, I felt like running, I was so excited, I just wanted to run. And I say, do it, go run. or like your legs are bouncing, keep bouncing. This is really good. They call it STEM behavior, where people will do things with their body to comfort themselves. This is important, do it. No longer do we want to inhibit those things. So, and we want to also, the safe sound protocol is the sound therapy that I was talking about. And then look at your water intake. And creative activities really help to open up that green light, the parasympathetic response. So I use this hashtag #ShameBustingWarriors because I say it's time for us to change the way we look at things, that reframe them from something's wrong with me, that to understand that your diagnosis is not destiny, it's not your identity, your thoughts, your feelings are not who you are, your experience does not define you. You have the opportunity to create new. You have the opportunity every day that you wake up to reshape your brain. It is in your power, and you can do it, and you just need to tap into that. And when we have people that tell you you can't, who are they to tell you? We need to transform our minds. We need to transform our lives from what we were programmed to believe about ourselves into how we were designed, what the potential is inside us. So all the stories you've been told about what you can and can't do, who you are, who you aren't, lay it down, pretend like you have amnesia and today's a new day and your task is to learn what you're made of and to go for it and do it. And so anyone that tells you you can't, you shouldn't, that's about them. How people treat us is about them, not about us. It's their belief system. And you know what happens when you step into your greatness, you step into your potential, people will want you to play small to make them comfortable for oppressing their potential. When they don't let themselves step into that, they don't want you to do that because it makes them anxious. That's not your story, it's not your journey. So just move on. Move on. Keep pursuing your dreams and who you are. And you will be surprised. So to learn more about this work, if you want to hear more messages like this, to learn more, there's many places you can find me. You can listen to my podcast, Inspired Living. You can go to my YouTube where I will post this video from today. If you want to look at it again and say, what was that she said? And I want to show my sister, I want to show my family, like that was something I want to remember. You can go there and do that. And then I also have opened the Inspired Living School where I'm going to start launching some courses to teach about these things. And then people can, because not all of us have access to therapy and providers with lack of insurance, lack of resources, schedule, and things like that. So I'm trying to make this accessible, whether for people that don't have resources and don't have insurance. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and stop here and open this up for any questions or discussion. Yes?
I just want to make a general discussion. All students here do have access to free mental health counselors on campus. 6 sessions.
Awesome. Yes. There are crisis lines too. There's ones that you can text as well. There is, if you want to find a therapist, go to psychologytoday.com and you can put in your information and it will tell you what providers have your insurance, and everyone's full right now. It is true. And what I tell them is I say just call everyone and be a squeaky wheel. When you call a provider, call them and you call them and you call them, they'll finally go, okay, fine. They'll just get you in. So it's just a thing. It's a thing that happens out there. And what providers think is they think if you aren't calling back, then you already found someone. That's a mistake a lot of providers make because they don't realize the person's waiting for you to call them back. And this is a problem that we have right now. So just keep calm, which is very hard to do when someone is depressed. And this I acknowledge. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, takeaway point, I want you to know people that are depressed are not choosing depression. It is not because of what they thought, who they are or where they came from. It is a biophysiological condition that we now have new interventions for that can help us build resiliency and change the way we think. You need to see qualified professionals to help you with that, someone who's informed with modern research and that can use strategies that work for you. If they don't, move on, find someone that will. It's okay to change providers and help and to choose what's right for you. So thank you so much, everyone, for being my Shamebusters and being here today. And I wish you all well.